Alright, so that was fun. I was recording, I'd say about, 5 characters in just to find out that my microphone wasn't working properly. So I probably won't spend as much detail as I did on my first recording just because I was seeing the patch notes for the first time. Like I said, I kind of listened to a few YouTubers and I was hearing from other people kind of what the patches were about, but I haven't really had a chance to go through and look at them myself. So, kind of what I was saying when I was recording my previous segment, I wanted to go through these patch notes kind of as like a friendly thing. I'm not really into the whole streaming thing and YouTubing and all that. I just kind of wanted to put out, or at least put in the record, my perspective on some of these units. I feel the last couple patches, for the most part, myself and another individual by the name of Myth, we've been kind of spot on with some of these buffs for some of these characters, and I think a lot of streamers have been a little bit harsh on some of these buffed units. Dilbit's like the one that comes to my mind the most, where people were just automatically like, oh, this buff ain't gonna help her. She's not gonna be anything great. She's gonna stay a trash unit. Maybe she'll be usable, and then turn around and then towards the end of the meta find out that she was the second most, I wouldn't say second most common drafted, but she was commonly drafted into a lot of openers like Rand, Pierre, C. Lewis, and she did her role extremely well after the rage changes that they did with her. Sorry about that. So kind of what I want to do is I kind of want to go through these patch notes and put my perspective on it. Like I said, my perspective doesn't mean a whole lot in comparison. I'm not exactly a legend player myself. I'm kind of roughly an emperor level player. I do play the meta. I do try to follow it as much as I can. So I do have experience playing against a lot of these meta comps and meta units. So my analysis is going to be a little bit more RTA focused. I'm not as concerned about guild wars and PvE content. My main viewpoint is going to be, are they going to be RTA relevant? Are they going to be meta relevant? Are they going to be units that I'm going to constantly want to be drafting? And looking over the list, and like I said, I already kind of went through a few of these because I was initially recording. When I was first going through this, I haven't seen a lot of these patch notes, and some of these units, I have some experience with some of these units, and some of these units I've never really touched. So a lot of these skills I had to go back over, look at their base speeds, and kind of figure out what they were doing previously. From what I was going through, what I noticed is a lot of these old units were suffering from the power creep issue. Their skills were essentially like single line skills, or skills that were meta defining back in the day. Maybe for some of them maybe never were meta defining. I didn't really come into playing the game until about like September 2020, so I came in a little bit later. So I don't have some of these like early players perspective on some of these units, but some of these units I have noticed, especially like Silverblade Armathia, she has been kind of underrepresented, and I think a big part of that is she didn't, I don't want to say she's bad. She has a very strong kit, and from what I've seen from what people have said previously, is that she's one of those ones where you gotta be careful. If you buff her too much, she could be extremely oppressive. But then the problem on the flip side is, if she doesn't receive enough attention, she's going to be kind of in the place that she was for a while now, where she wasn't really drafted. I don't want to say she was worse ML, but I think that she was arguably in the bottom five. And the bottom five previously, to the patch before, was kind of like Judge Kisei, Silverblade Armathia, DJB. Like, she was kind of in that category. But I think the thing with most MLs is they're usable. You can find a place for them if you really want to. But are they going to be really? Are you going to be arguably drafting them in most cases? Probably not. So Silverblade Armathia is one that I was extremely excited about because I've been waiting to see this unit buffed for a while. I personally don't own her, but with me I'm almost caught up with a lot of the MLs. I don't want to say I'm that far along, but I think after ML Kerwick and Archie and Mercedes, she might be one that I want to go after with my selected Mystic Summon, if I'm understanding that all correctly. And the main thing is I want to do a lot of testing with her, and I do think she has potential. And when I was initially looking over these patch notes, I noticed that they did give Silverblade Armathia quite a bit new tools in her kit. So right away on her S1, I'm already seeing a lot of additional text. Like her S1 originally was just 75% chance to apply a burn. Cool. Like, attacks an enemy, plays a burn. That's a super outdated power crept skill. Not that it was bad back in the day, but now when you have all these units doing like multiple things in one skill, and we could really thank Angel Light for that, because with all her paragraph long skills, I do think this additional information is going to be helpful. I think that I really do like the extra attack that they attach with her, kind of like doing the same solitary treatment. I think that they're going this way because they're trying to protect these units from counter. Obviously, that was a big reason with solitary. Her S1 used to be an AoE, and she would get countered by Violet, Ram, and some of these other units. So with the extra attack, it provides some additional protection for the unit. Now, I think her S1 is actually really good. I think, being able to attack all enemies with a chance to burn, whether or not you care about the burn, but I do think that the increase in combat readiness is actually really good. I do like the extra attack effect. But I think Silverblade Armathia, and a lot of players have kind of noticed this, and they're kind of been saying it for a while. It's like, with all these new modern day mages coming out, they all have built-in dispels. They're all able to strip immunity, strip buffs, and peel away that defense so that way you could actually apply to debuffs. And I noticed that they didn't really give that to Silverblade Armathia. Now, some people might argue that if they give it to her, that she would be overboard and she would be extremely broken. Personally, I kind of wish that they didn't give her like all of these extra tools, because now if they want to go back and add the dispel, it might be too much, and that's kind of unfortunate. But I do think with these tools that they gave her a lot to work with. I do think the AoE with the extra attack is going to be useful. The S2 really has me excited, because when an ally, except for the caster attack, so you could bring a lot of AoE units in in the combat with Silverblade Armathia, like Politis. And Politis is one that I'm thinking of already. She would answer the strip factor to get the debuffs off. Most of her moves are AoE, so she would help increase the combat readiness of SBA by 20%. So I do think there's a lot of potential here, but I think by them not giving her the D-spell, they kind of took away her ability to be a self-independent unit. And it's kind of crazy, because when I looked further into the patch notes, I noticed that they gave it to Armathia, but they did not give it to the ML version. So it's kind of some confusion, like, are they really thinking some of these buffs through? And then the other part might be they're scared of potentially overbuffing an ML unit like Silverblade Armathia to where she could become a problem like APOC. But the issue that I'm kind of seeing with this is with with them adding all these buffs, essentially there's the problem that, and their stance with the nerf is that if she really does need that D-spell now, did they add too much to her to where if she does have the D-spell, would it push her over the edge? I do think her S3 is going to be, decently good, decreases combat readiness of the highest combat readiness by 30%. So she's really going to be good about CR manipulation, and I think that is a cool element to her. But does she answer the problems that she was dealing with initially? Her burns, okay, they're staying around, but we're also seeing the age of the cleansers. We're seeing Dilibet, we're seeing ML Kerwick, we're seeing Maid, we're seeing Ruel. Even though Ruel's not a crazy good cleanser, do we really expect these burns to stick around? Probably not. Her CR manipulation, will she actually get a chance to use it with a lot of these units hiding behind immunity, especially immunity that they're going to get off of Kerwick, because she'll apply the burns, Kerwick is going to dispel it, and to give, I believe it's like 2-turn immunity to the team. So how relevant is she going to be? I don't really know. But there is potential here. I don't want to write her off. I don't want to say that she's going to be a bad unit, especially with some of the things that they gave her, but she might be one of those ones that she might need other units like Politis in order to function. But I do think there's a lot here to test, and some people might be trying different sets. Some people might be trying to have her go a lot faster. But looking at this, I feel like she's going to be a moderate ML. I don't think that she's going to be meta defining. And I really do think the simple answer was that they just needed to give her a D-spell. They needed to give her some way to get around immunity, especially with all these cool tools that they gave her. And I wouldn't actually even been fine with them scaling some of it back if they gave it to her. But overall, I think, this is a good step in the right direction. My only concern is with them not willing to nerf, will she actually get the skill that I think she needs in the future? Who knows? Dark Corvus, we kind of talked briefly about. I've never actually been able to pull this unit. He's kind of eluded me. When I was choosing the ML selectors, I chose Arby because Arby was still the big thing at the time. Dark Corvus, I didn't really play back in the day, and apparently I heard back in the day, he was a super relevant unit. In Guild Wars, that's kind of always been his place. The S1 change, I don't know how much that's really going to make a difference with him. Does he really need, obviously he needs to recover health, but does that answer the problems that he's kind of going through? The meta is extremely aggressive, extremely fast, very debuff oriented. Injury is a big factor in the meta. Can he even keep up? And does this really answer it? I don't know. But I will say that his S3 I do think is a step in the right direction. Even though it's not much, I do like it for Guild Wars, especially with a lot of the meta defenses that we're seeing right now. I know Miro is huge on meta defenses right now for Guild Wars, and I think him finally being able to have Extinction on S3 could be really good because he might be able to extinct the Miro, keep her down, prevent other units from being brought back to life via Apoc Ravi or Ruel. My only issue is with a lot of these new units like Hai Wong, is he really just going to end up getting, killed turn 2, turn 3, before he really gets to go off? Is he just going to get debuffed down? Is this aggressive meta really going to even allow him to shine? I don't know. I don't think this is going to make a huge difference to Dark Corvus. I don't want to be one of those people like, oh, Dark Corvus is, bad and, he's trash and he's never going to have a place. I think Guild Wars is his place, and I do think the S3 change is a step in the right direction. But I almost feel at this point that Dark Corvus kind of needs a rehaul. He needs a needs a rehaul in order to fit in the current state of the game. I think he's a very archaic unit from back all the way to season 1 when this game first started. I wasn't playing then, but maybe some people have a different perspective, but I just think he's an outdated unit. I really do think that's the problem. DN, it's funny because a lot of people were not using DN, and I personally like DN. When I've used her on my alt account, I have found that she's been really good. She really does tank up your team. I really did like the spell, the shields, everything that she kind of had to provide, even the combat readiness on her S1. I could appreciate why she wasn't doing so well. She was a very slow Soul Weaver. Did she really do enough? Honestly, I can't really say for sure. I don't really know the rationale why DN wasn't super relevant. But I do think them providing her a 2 debuff the spell before doing the shield is really good with a lot of these units like AOL or Piera. So I think it will help her become a more relevant Soul Weaver with cleanse capabilities. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I think she's going to suffer the same way that a lot of Soul Weavers are right now, where you have to build her with extreme amount of ER, so she's going to need a lot of effective resistance. She is she is a slower end Soul Weaver. I don't believe she's FS, or I could be wrong. I think I did have her around 240, so I don't. And then we also have the Frenzy change. Honestly, I think that the 2 debuff dispel will make her more relevant, but I don't think that she's going to be meta defining. But I do think this is going to make her usable. I do think it would not be surprising if we did see her pop up from time to time, especially with the Frenzy change, especially with them getting the 15% speed. The only issue that I have really with the N is essentially Rimmer. With all her buffs that she provides with the shields, with the crit resistance, with the defense buff, she's just kind of a prime target for Rimmer. And it's kind of why would you pick her if you have access to ML Kerwick or Maid or Dilbet or some of these other premier units that can dispel, that can cleanse, and they provide a little bit more. I just don't know if the end provides enough currently with the meta, but I do think this is a solid buff. I do think that having the second dispel, or being able to dispel 2 buffs, will make her more relevant. I just think she's one of those units too that needs a little bit more. I think she kind of has the Armathia effect where you kind of these single line text. I think she needs to be able to do a little bit more for her to be a little bit more relevant. Now Armathia, I talked a lot in my original recording, but unfortunately my mic wasn't working properly. I think Armathia has a lot of the abilities that Silverblade Armathia wants, which is kind of funny because she's the RGB version. They gave her a D spell so that she could dispel two buffs. She, for each unhealable inflicted, she gets combat readiness, and they even took unhealable away from Silverblade Armathia. I also think it's also really good that she detonates her burns at the end of turn. So, I mean, with Silverblade Armathia, one of the things I was kind of talking about is like if you see Silverblade Armathia being drafted into you, more than likely what you're going to be taking is you're going to be taking your ML Kerwick or Dilibet or other Premier Cleanser. And with ML Kerwick, with Silverblade, you're just going to cleanse the burns and you're just going to play immunity. But the nice thing with Armathia is that not only does she get the D spell, but at the end of the turn with her, I believe it's the S1. Don't quote me. Okay, so ignite, yeah. So it would be the S1. She's gonna pop the burns, and so what I'm seeing with Armathia is I'm kind of seeing like a scaled up researcher carrot, and I think a lot of it's gonna really come down to multipliers. If her multipliers are really good, because I'm also seeing that on her S3 that she's getting a barrier that scales off of her attack. So with Armata, she might be, kind of built in the same way as Samurai Syria or Researcher Carrot. I think more likely she's going to be built like Researcher Carrot. Personally, I think that she's going to be made decently bruiserish. I think, she's going to have high attack. You're probably going to want some effectiveness on her. Maybe not even that much. Maybe you're just going to go the Researcher Carrot route and you're going to debuff the units that you're going to debuff regardless. I don't know if she's going to be better than Researcher Carrot, but I do think that she's going the same direction. And if we remember anything with Researcher Carrot, regardless of her falling off the meta, I do think that Researcher Carrot is still very meta relevant. She will pop up. I know in last season people were building her like 250, 260 speed, and they were doing quite a number with that character. So I think Armathia is getting the Researcher Carrot effect. She's got the burn pop, she's got the D spell. She's going to have an unhillable on top of everything else, and she's also got the barrier. So I think she's going to be underrated. I do think that people might sleep on her. People might just remember her always being a bad character and, writing her off. Like kind of the same way a lot of streamers and other kind of people kind of like, or, this character's not worth the time of day because they've historically been bad, in the same way as Dilibet. But I do think there's a lot of potential there. She's definitely one that I would like to see more testing for. I would definitely like to see the multipliers. I think the multipliers are going to be a major factor. Ludwig. So I talked about Ludwig, like I said in my last recording, a little bit more in detail. I'm just going to kind of go over briefly. I don't know too much about Ludwig, unfortunately. The only thing I know about Ludwig is every time I've been in an RTA, every once in a while there will be a crazy player who will come in with a Giga built Ludwig and with like an Alpha that's like 290 speed and a Random 315. Usually the players who have used Ludwig against me have just gear capped me like beyond all hell, like just completely well territory. And Ludwig to me has had the damage before, and it's kind of interesting to see that with these recent buffs that they're going to actually scale up his damage even more. So I think he might go from like a meme cleaver to actually being maybe meta relevant. He might be a new cleave option that, from looking at a lot of these buffs, it's kind of scary. He's going to get a decrease on buff duration, so he's going to dispel. He's going to be able to stun. If he stuns, he gets a 50% increase on the CR. He's going to have 30% defense pin. If he has invincibility, that's going to even be 45%. So that's kind of crazy. So I'm definitely seeing Ludwig as a very strong last cannon. I'm actually really impressed. Am I going to build him? Probably not. I'm not really much of a cleave player. But I would be curious to hear from some of my guildies, their experience from using Ludwig. I'm kind of looking at Cookie. I think Cookie's going to be the one who's going to try him. He's kind of always trying a lot of these meme builds. So I'm curious to see, the potential Ludwig. I think, he has a good chance. The EA, I'm not going to really talk too much about. Now, the Stina, I think this is where I stopped before I found out that my microphone wasn't working properly. And like I said, I'm just doing this this little YouTube thing just for my guild and for anyone who might be curious on my perspective. I'm not trying to push this anywhere. Obviously, I'm not a legend player. Take what I say with a grain of salt. My perspective is like an Emperor RTA player. But Destina, I think the S1 is a step in the right direction. I think healing increases proportional to Esther's max health. I think that's obvious. I think most Soul Weavers go off of their own health. I don't know why she was scaling off of the target's max health. Even though there might be some situation where that might be good, like say if you have a 30,000k health A-Ravi with Proof of Valor, maybe that might be good. But I think in most case scenarios, this is going to be ultimately better. I do like her S2 with the Dispel the 2 buffs. Even though they had to reduce the combat readiness by 30%, still think 30% is a very big push up. She doesn't quite need to be at Amelia status with a lot of what they're giving her. Now, I haven't read Destina's Grace, so this is ultimately where I stop. So before it says, grant all allies the blessing of a Spirit Lord, dispelling all debuffs before recovering health. When an ally is debuffed, their combat readiness will also... Okay, so dispels all buffs, so debuffs. So she's a crazy cleanser. I could see why some people were building her before. So now what she's going to do, she's going to grant all allies blessing of a Spirit Lord. So she revives, so she's going to have a mate effect. For allies that are not dead, dispels all debuffs before recovering health, amount recovered according to max health. The start of battle grants, so at the start of the first battle, grants Spirit Blessing to cast for 2 turns, increases effect. That's crazy. So she's going to literally start off the fight with a 60% effect resist increase. So you can literally stack her with Bastion. I think Bastion is like, what, 50 or 60%? So she can literally start with 120% extra effective resist. So you really only are going to need effectively, like say if you want 300 ER, 180% effective resistance. And like I said, my math might be wrong, bear with me. But I think some of my other guild members were saying that you're going to be able to build her a lot tankier, and I could definitely see that now. With this effective resistance increase, you're going to be able to put more into her tank stats. And I think the fact that she does the revive, that she has a dispel for those who rely, she's a very defensive mate, and I like that. Whereas mate does the attack buff, I think Destina... Honestly, looking at these, I almost want to say that Destina is going to be meta. Like, I think the hard thing is, you know, what is she competing with? If ML Kerwick and Dilibet did not exist, I think that she might arguably be the best cleanser in the game. This is insane. I do think these buffs altogether have a lot of potential. The unfortunate part, like I was saying with ML Kerwick, he reduces debuff durations on his turn, and Dilibet naturally has, you know, that constant cleanse going on, which I think is, you know, was kind of a step in the wrong direction. I don't think a warrior should out gap a soul weaver when it comes to cleanser capability, but the fact that Destina has all this into her kit is really promising. I really like the skill 3. I like the fact that she revives. I like the fact that she has all the dispels, and that she has the ER increase the start. I think Destina is probably, from all the ones I've been looking at so far, is probably the winner of these buffs. I think Armantia Sleeper, I think Ludwig is, you know, potentially going to be a scary unit. I can't really say for sure. It really depends on his base stats, but I'm not looking too much into this right now. But I think Destina is just insane. I think, you know, she is arguably the winner from what I'm seeing so far. Dark Horse, meh, and then Silverblader Armantia, you know, moderate. I don't think that she's going to be insane, but I think she might pop up a little bit more. Guided Aether. I didn't even want to read this unit. I just hate this unit so much. Okay, so what does he do now? So he attacks the Spower before recovering health of all allies and granting a barrier for 2 turns. Amount recovered. Okay, so is that his... that must be his S2, because usually they order it like this. Increase version max health. So he recovers health of all allies and grants a barrier. Okay, I personally don't think that's that insane, but... okay, so let's check the S3. Delivers a blow to the enemy with spirit power and spells all buffs before to the enemy. So it's not even AoE, it's a 1 person before increasing attack of the ally with the highest attack for 2 turns, increasing combat readiness by 50%. So essentially the spell sets up and then he pushes up. I just don't think this is enough to really make Guided Aether relevant. Like I said, I have been wrong before, and I don't want to just say this unit is bad, but I just don't see that this change is going to have a massive impact. Maybe that some people are hoping for, but I did forget that he does have some exclusive equipment, so maybe some people will figure out, you know, an answer to that. All right, Kali. Oh my God, Armin's got a lot. Alright, so Kali, so what does she do now? So ambush, baptism of fire. Is that okay? Let me look this up. I actually have no clue with Kali. Like I said, some of these units I have never used. I've only looked at them in the waiting room. Let's see here. Okay, so ambush is her S1. That's okay. So her S1. So ambush is the enemy with a 75% chance to steal one buff. Okay, so they're gonna be like a rimmer effect, increases effect chance and steals two buffs. Okay, I think that's I think that's kind of cool. I think it's a unique effect. I don't know, if she's gonna be good with this, but I do like that they're adding some of these unique effects on some of these characters. I think that's kind of cool that they're adding, Rimmer's unique effect to some other units. Alright, S2 attacks enemy with an unseen blade, grants stealth of the caster for 2 turns. Okay, so buff oriented stealth. At the end turn, detonates any bleeding effects and bombs inflicted on the target. Okay, so that must. Okay, so actually, what's. Oh no, baptism of fire. So this is probably links into her S3. Attacks enemy with a dagger, inflicting bleed and planting a bomb for increasing combat readiness at the caster by 50%. When the target is a fire elemental hero. Are they doing that again where they're doing fire elemental heroes, kind of locking away some of their abilities behind? I just don't know how useful that's going to be, especially in RTA when, they're adding the RGB factor to Frenzy. Inflicting bleed, plants a bomb, increases combat readiness of the caster by 50%. Okay, so S3, and then she pushes up her turn. So essentially she's getting the S3, S2 combo. Increases. Okay, so essentially she's just going to be a setup character. So her S1 is going to steal, her S3 is going to plant the bomb and bleed, and our S2 is going to pop them. And because bombs and I believe bleeding effects skill off of attack, I'm guessing you're going to, try to stack as much attack as you possibly can. Okay, so imprint concentration actually. So okay, so she gets attacked. So yeah, so my idea is pretty much right. So you're going to be wanting to essentially be stacking a decent amount of speed, and you're going to want her at high attack. So is it really going to be relevant that you're going to have a whole lot of crit chance and crit damage? Probably not. And it seems like they're going that direction with a few of these units. Well, I mean, Armonthia and Silverblade make sense because, burn-oriented characters generally want to stack a lot of attack, but I don't know. I don't hate it. I think for a lot of players, this might be a fun unit. In my perspective, and with RTA on my mind, is he going to show up? Probably not. But we've seen crazier things. We're seeing right now one of those 2-star monsters starting to appear in RTA because it has a high base speed, and all of a sudden it becomes usable. So I don't want to say that it couldn't happen, but I just don't see anything here that's going to make her relevant in the RTA meta. Now Armin is the one that I keep hearing like everyone going off about, so I'm curious what's going on here. Attacks with a shield. When it's not the caster's turn, this attack changes into an attack that targets all enemies. Oh, okay. So she gets an AoE. So attacks a shield with a 30%. Okay, so she gets an AoE stun. So that's really good. So the 35% chance, and it goes. Okay, so that's counterattack chance. Oh no, that's gonna be for protect. My bad. So attacks with 35% chance. When it's not the caster's turn, this attack changes attacks. Okay, so it's not the caster. So you're gonna want to build. Okay, so you might not need a build on counter. I need to read the second one. So an attack has a 15% chance to counterattack, so that goes all the way to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or hold on, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 20% chance to counterattack. When an ally except for the caster is attacked by a single attack, decreases damage suffered by 20% when attacked. Okay, so whenever you're attacked. So do you want Armin on counter set now? So you're going to go counter set with this, and so whenever you're attacking and it's not your turn, then you're going to get the S1 stun. That's kind of a cool combo. I like it. I mean, they might be taking a page out of the recent Bad Cat Armin, and they might be using that as inspiration. Has a 25%. Oh, okay, and then this is going to be Awakens. 25% chance. When Alex of a caster is attacked by a single, decreases damage suffered by 20% when more than one damage. Okay, so essentially they're going to raise it to a 30% chance. That's actually pretty good. So you got 30% chance off that, plus 30% chance off of her counter set. And so she might end up being kind of a stun machine. I don't know how much I would want to rely on, gambling factors when it comes to like stun and art, like 15% and all that, but seems pretty good. All right, so this one, oh man, they cut a good chunk off. So shield wall. So uses the shield of light to dispel one debuff from all allies and grants Increase defense to the caster for 2 turns, and a barrier to all allies and proportional to the caster. Okay, so she's going to be a very defense counter-oriented hero. Decrease damage suffered by this. Okay, so they just tied in. Decrease damage suffered by. So they kind of tied in some of these effects into her S2. I think this is cool. I don't know how high meta she is, but I do think that Armin, you know, I would not be surprised if I saw her in an RTA match. She seems like she has potential. She might be a great new defense unit. But the problem is just like with the speed and Hai Wong and a lot of these other factors that are going on right now, it's like, and the fact that she's going to give barriers and everything for Opsig to attack, I don't know. But I do think these are amazing buffs. I do think Armin, you know, is definitely going to potentially appear more. She might show up. I think this makes her a tremendously better character. But thinking with the meta on my mind, it's like I don't know how good the wait and see what happens kind of playstyle is effective right now in the meta, because the meta is so aggressively fast. You know, your unit could just get popped in 1 second and killed with Hai Wong. And so I don't know how I feel about a slower counter hero kind of waiting to be attacked. But this S2 S1 combo has me pretty excited. I would like to see some people use her, and you know, potentially I could be wrong, and potentially, you know, she might appear in certain RTA matches. And she also has her, oh man, and you can move her, so you could actually massively increase her counter attack with her exclusive equipment. That's wild. So I think looking over these buffs, I think these are all, for the most part, decently good buffs. I think even if they might not be super meta defining on some of these, I do think that these units are going to become more fun. I do think that they're going to be more usable. I do think that, you know, they're going to have a place or have a home. I think Silverblade Armanthea, I'm a little bit let down with this. I really do think she needed a dismount, and they gave it to her RGB version. But if that's the case, you know, that's not a biggie. I wouldn't mind using the RGB version. I just want to use it in Armanthea. But I do think that they gave her a lot on her kit, even though I don't think they gave her the solution to her problem. And that kind of worries me because, like I said earlier, will they buff her later with, you know, how much they gave her here? I don't know. Dark Corvus, I think he's going to be slightly better in Guild Wars. DN, you know, it's going to be wait and see, but ultimately I don't think too much is going to change with her. Armanthea, I think, is sleeper. I think, you know, depending on how the multiplayers end up, I think she has a very strong chance. Ludwig, I think, has a lot of potential too. He might, you know, just be an insane nuker now with like these defense penetrations. I think Destina is absolutely the winner of these buffs. I think Destina is going to be absolutely insane. It actually almost makes me want to 6-star mine Callister up, but I think the hard part with me is like, do I need her? Like, you know, because I'm going to be rolling pretty hard on ML Kerwick, and he's going to answer the same problems I'm going to need Destina for. So I think, but I do think for people who can't get ML Kerwick, I do think Destina is going to be like a must build. I think that she is a premier cleanser. Guide Aether, I just wish this character would stop existing. I don't know how many I got rid of for silver transmit stones. Coley, I think, is fun. I don't know how good she's going to be, but I can see a lot of people having fun with her. And then Armin, I think, also had some insane changes, even though I don't know if this is going to push her over the edge to be a little bit more relevant. Ultimately, that's just my perspective. Like I said, I just kind of want to put it on the record. I kind of just want to do, you know, a fun little video, put it up for the guild. If anyone's interested, you know, take a look at it. I'm not the best at video editing. I just didn't want to, like, you know, write a wall of text on the guild chat. Anyone who has a different opinion than me, I'm curious to hear your guys' stance. I could be wrong on some of these units, and you know, some of them might be better than I think. But thank you guys for tuning in. That should be it for the video. Hopefully my mic stayed on this entire time. We'll see.